There is a beautiful saying, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. How true this is! Too often, we rush to judge others based on what we see, hear, or assume. We forget that every person has a hidden story, an unseen struggle, a silent pain, a lesson they are still learning. When we start understanding this, compassion replaces criticism and love replaces judgment. Imagine walking down the street and seeing someone angry or rude. Instantly, our mind says, "What's wrong with them?" But have we ever paused to think, maybe they just lost a loved one? Maybe they're facing rejection, or maybe they're simply tired of pretending to be strong. We don't know their story, yet we label them in seconds. True wisdom lies in learning to look deeper. Every person we meet carries experiences, emotions, and scars that shape who they are. Judging them based on one action or one moment is like reading one line of a book and thinking we understand the whole story. Life doesn't work that way. When we stop judging, we open space for empathy. We learn to listen more and assume less. And as we do, we realize we too have been judged unfairly many times. We know the pain of being misunderstood. That awareness becomes our teacher, helping us respond with grace rather than reaction. So, the next time you feel the urge to judge, pause for a second. Ask yourself, do I know the whole story? The pause is where transformation begins. It's where kindness grows, relationships heal, and humanity shines. Every person you meet carries an invisible story, one you may never fully know. Their smiles may hide pain, and their silence may hold 1,000 words left unspoken. So often, we look at people and assume we understand who they are, but in reality, we've only seen a fragment of their journey. The world trains us to judge by appearances, but life teaches us, sooner or later, that appearances can be the most deceptive of all. Behind every face is a story, sometimes beautiful, sometimes broken, sometimes both. Think about how many times you've smiled even when your heart was aching. You still went to work, still met people, still acted like everything was fine, because the world doesn't pause for your pain. And yet, if someone saw you on that day, they might have thought, oh, they're doing great. They didn't see the tears you wiped before stepping out of your house. They didn't hear the silent prayers you whispered while pretending to be strong. If we've lived through that ourselves, how can we forget that others might be living through it too? Every person's life is a collection of unseen moments. Nights of loneliness, days of courage, and silent victories no one else knows about. Some people carry the pain of losing loved ones, but choose to smile so others don't worry. Some carry financial struggles, yet they show up every day trying to keep their dignity intact. Some battle mental storms in silence because they fear being judged or misunderstood. Just because someone looks fine doesn't mean they are. Just because they're quiet doesn't mean they're weak. Sometimes silence is the loudest cry for help. And strength is hidden in those who never speak of their pain. When we begin to understand this, we naturally become gentler with others. Instead of reacting harshly, we start to respond with patience. Instead of labeling, we start to listen. A kind word, a smile, or even a simple act of acknowledgement can mean the world to someone who's struggling internally. That's the beauty of human connection. It doesn't take grand gestures to make a difference. Sometimes just not judging someone is the greatest kindness we can offer. Imagine a person sitting quietly in a corner, not talking much. Our first thought might be, they're unfriendly. But what if that person is just fighting social anxiety or recovering from a deep emotional wound? Or think of someone who gets angry easily. We might call them short-tempered. But what if that anger is their shield, a way to protect their fragile heart from being hurt again? Everyone has reasons for being who they are. The tragedy is not that we don't know their reasons. It's that we don't even try to understand. If we could look at people and say, I may not know your story, but I respect that you have won, the world would instantly become softer. We would replace judgment with curiosity, criticism with compassion, and assumptions with awareness. And as we do that, we'd notice something extraordinary. People begin to open up, walls begin to fall, and trust begins to grow. We may never know the full story of someone's life, but just believing they have won changes how we treat them. So, every time you meet someone, whether it's a friend, a stranger, or even someone who hurt you, pause for a moment. Remember, you don't know what's behind their smile or what battles they're fighting silently. Treat them with the same gentleness you once wished for yourself, because every person you meet is not just a face in the crowd. They are a living story, still being written, and sometimes just being kind can become the most beautiful chapter in theirs. Judging others is easy because it requires no effort, no thought, and no understanding. It's something the human mind does automatically. It sees, assumes, and reacts. But empathy, that takes courage. It takes patience. It demands that we pause, listen, and feel what the other person might be going through. Judgment comes from the mind. Empathy comes from the heart. And the heart always sees what the eyes cannot. When we judge, we create distance. We separate ourselves from others, putting them in boxes labeled by our limited perceptions: lazy, arrogant, strange, or weak. Yet, if we were to look deeper, we might find that the person we call lazy is someone battling depression. The one we label arrogant is just trying to mask deep insecurity. The one we find strange may simply have a different way of coping with pain. It's easy to categorize people when we don't understand their emotions, but understanding is exactly what makes us human. Empathy is the bridge that connects hearts. It allows us to see not just what a person does, but by why they do it. Imagine meeting someone who snaps at you for no reason. Instinctively, your ego says, "How dare they talk to me like that?" But what if, before reacting, you ask yourself, What might they be going through today? That single question changes everything. Maybe they just received bad news. Maybe their life feels like it's falling apart. When we make that shift from judgment to curiosity, we step into compassion. It's important to remember that everyone has a different threshold for pain. What seems small to you might be overwhelming to someone else. For example, a student who fails an exam may spiral into anxiety, while another might brush it off and move on. The difference lies not in the event, but in the unseen emotional weight each person carries. When we judge someone for being too sensitive or too emotional, we ignore the fact that we haven't lived their story or walked in their shoes. Empathy asks us to pause. It asks us to feel before we form opinions. When we practice empathy, we don't need to have all the answers, we simply need to have an open heart. The truth is, we all crave to be understood more than to be judged. And the moment we extend that same understanding to others, we create space for healing, not just in them, but in ourselves too. When you see someone struggling, don't rush to correct or criticize them. Just being present, just offering a listening ear, can make all the difference. Words of judgment can push people deeper into their pain, but a simple act of empathy can lift them out of it. Remember, empathy is not about fixing someone. It's about feeling with them. It's about saying, I may not fully understand your pain, but I'm here with you. A true empathy transforms relationships, workplaces, and communities. It helps us replace conflict with connection. When we begin to see the human behind the behavior, our hearts soften we stop demanding perfection from others because we realize that we ourselves are imperfect. We stop reacting from ego and start responding from love. In a world that's quick to judge and slow to understand, empathy is a revolution. It's the quiet power that heals wounds invisible to the eye. So before you form an opinion about someone, take a deep breath and remind yourself, you're only seeing one page of their story. The rest of the book might surprise you. And when you read it with empathy in there, you might just discover that we're all more alike than we think. Fragile, hopeful, and simply trying to do our best with the stories life has written for us. We often make assumptions based on one action, one word, or one moment, forgetting that one chapter cannot define an entire book. People are far more complex than what we see on the surface. Every individual is a collection of experiences, some joyful, some painful, some still unresolved. But the tragedy is that we judge them on a single event, a single behavior, or a single rumor and forget that there's an entire story behind it that we haven't even read. Think of life as a vast book filled with pages of laughter, tears, struggle, and growth. You can't open someone's book at a random page and think you understand their whole journey. Yet that's exactly what judgment does. It freezes a moment in time and says, this is who you are, as if people are incapable of change, as if they cannot evolve beyond their mistakes or past choices. but human beings are constantly growing. The person you see today is not who they were yesterday, and certainly not who they will be tomorrow. Imagine someone who was once rude to you. Maybe that moment left a bitter taste in your heart, and you decided that's who they are, an unkind person. But what if that person was going through an emotional breakdown that day? What if their anger was a mask for their pain? What if deep down they regret it, but never knew how to apologize? When we see people only through the lens of one moment, we strip them of their humanity. We deny them the grace that we ourselves so desperately need when we make mistakes. All of us have moments we're not proud of. We've all said things we wish we could take back. They acted out of anger or fear, or failed to be our best selves. And yet, when we are the ones at fault, we hope others will understand us, forgive us, or at least see our intentions. We want them to know that our bad day doesn't define our character. If we expect that understanding for ourselves, shouldn't we offer it to others too? The truth is, no one's life can be summed up in a single scene. A person might make a poor choice and still have a kind heart. They might fail in one area, but be incredibly strong in another. Judging them for one flaw is like dismissing a masterpiece because of a single brush stroke you don't like. When we reduce someone to one chapter, we miss the beauty of the whole story. The moments of courage, the silent prayers, the lessons learned, and the transformation that followed. Time has a powerful way of revealing who people truly are. Someone you disliked years ago might have grown into a wise, kind, and compassionate soul. Likewise, someone you once admired might have fallen from grace. But that's life. It's always moving, always changing, and so are the people in it. Our opinions, however, tend to get stuck. We remember people as they were, not as they are, to be fair, to be truly kind. We must allow others the same space to grow that we expect for ourselves. Before you judge someone based on a single chapter of their story, remind yourself, you haven't read the entire book. Maybe the next chapters are filled with redemption, understanding, and change. Maybe that person you wrote off will surprise you. The greatest gift we can offer someone is the belief that they can become better, that their past does not define their future. When we give people that chance, we don't just set them free, we set ourselves free from the burden of judgment too. So, let us learn to look beyond the single moments that offend us, irritate us, or disappoint us. Let us remember that people are not their mistakes, nor are they their worst days. Every human being is a work in progress, and every story deserves to be read to the end. When we rush to label others as good or bad, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to learn from them. Every person who enters our life carries a message, a lesson, or a mirror that reflects something we need to understand about ourselves. Sometimes that lesson comes wrapped in kindness, and sometimes it arrives through pain or conflict. But if we stop at judgment, we miss the deeper meaning behind their presence in our journey. It's easy to like people who are kind, understanding, and gentle with us. We call them good. But when someone hurts us, disagrees with us, or challenges us, we often label them as bad. Yet the truth is, life sends both types of people to shape us. The kind ones teach us how to give love, and the difficult ones teach us how to grow in patience. Forgiveness and strength, both are equally important. If we see only through the narrow lens of right and wrong, or good and bad, we become blind to life's deeper wisdom. Think about a teacher who gives tough assignments or challenges students with strict discipline. To some, that teacher may seem harsh, but often that very challenge is what pushes the student to become better, more focused, more resilient. Similarly, in life, not every person who causes discomfort is an enemy. Some are teachers in disguise. The people who test our limits, who irritate us, who trigger our weaknesses, they help us discover parts of ourselves we never knew existed. Without them, we would never know how strong we can be. Sometimes, a person who hurt you deeply might have unknowingly pushed you toward self-respect. The pain they caused may have forced you to set boundaries, to value yourself more, or to walk away from what no longer serves you. At that moment, you might have called them, but later, you realize that they were the catalyst for your transformation. Painful experiences often carry the greatest wisdom. We just need time to see it. On the other hand, we can also learn from those who show us love, kindness, and patience. They remind us of the goodness that still exists in the world. They inspire us to be better humans. But again, if we only label them as good people, we limit their depth too. Because even they have flaws, even they make mistakes, and yet they choose love. That is what makes them truly beautiful. Not perfection, but the courage to be kind in an imperfect world. Every person is both light and shadow. We all have moments of greatness and moments of weakness. When we judge others as entirely good or entirely bad, we deny this truth. We forget that humanity is complex. Even the best people have their struggles. And even those we criticize might have redeeming qualities we fail to see. A single act of kindness from someone we dislike can teach us more about humility than 1,000 words from those we admire. So instead of dividing people into categories, let us ask, what can I learn from this person? That question changes everything. It transforms irritation into insight, pain into growth, and differences into understanding. It shifts our focus from reaction to reflection. When we see others as teachers instead of enemies, we stop carrying resentment and start embracing wisdom. Every person we meet is part of our spiritual curriculum. Some come to comfort us, others to challenge us, and some to awaken something within us that was asleep. Life places them in our path, not by accident, but by design. The lesson is never in the labeling. It's in the learning. And when we stop judging people as good or bad, we begin to see them and ourselves with greater clarity, compassion, and peace. Compassion begins with humility, the humility to accept that we don't have all the facts. So often, we assume we know why someone behaves a certain way, speaks a certain word, or makes a certain choice. But the truth is, we see only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface lies a story, a struggle, and a set of circumstances we can't even imagine. To be compassionate, we must first accept that our perception is limited, that we don't always know what someone is going through, and that it's not our place to judge. What appears as weakness may actually be a quiet display of strength. Consider the person who chooses to walk away instead of arguing, who chooses silence instead of revenge, or who forgives when they could easily hate. To the world, that might look like weakness. But it takes immense courage and emotional maturity to act with restraint when the ego wants to react. Compassion invites us to look deeper, to see that sometimes the strongest hearts are the ones that have suffered most and yet still choose love. Similarly, what looks like arrogance might actually be insecurity. The person who constantly talks about themselves may simply be craving validation because they've been ignored or belittled their whole life. The one who seems detached may not be cold-hearted. They may have built walls to protect themselves after being hurt too many times. We're so quick to judge the surface, but compassion asks us to look beyond behavior and into the emotions that shape it. Every action has a reason, and every person has a story. Humility allows us to replace assumptions with curiosity. Instead of saying, "I know why they did that," we begin to ask, "I wonder what they've been through." That small shift in attitude is the seed of compassion. It makes us softer, gentler, and more understanding. It helps us see others not as problems to be fixed, but as souls trying to heal, just like us. Life becomes much lighter when we stop playing the role of the judge and start being a friend, a listener, a supporter. In a world that glorifies being right, humility teaches us the beauty of being kind. You don't have to understand everything about someone to show them compassion. Sometimes it's enough to simply withhold judgment, to give them space, or to say, "I don't know what you're going through, but I care." That simple act can restore someone's faith in humanity. People remember kindness long after words fade. True compassion doesn't mean we excuse bad behavior. It means we understand the pain behind it. It means we can recognize wrongdoing without hatred, see flaws without contempt, and set boundaries without bitterness. Compassion is not weakness, it's wisdom in action. It's the understanding that everyone is doing the best they can with the awareness and tools they have at this moment. Some are healing, some are learning, and some are simply surviving. And if we can meet them where they are, instead of where we think they should be, we make the world a softer place. Appearances are rarely the full truth. A smile can hide pain. Confidence can mask fear, and anger can conceal grief. The world doesn't always show us what people feel. It only shows us what they allow us to see. Compassion fills the gap between what is seen and what is unseen. It allows us to treat people not based on appearances, but with awareness that something deeper may be at play. So, when you see someone struggling in the behaving oddly or acting in a way you don't understand, take a breath. Don't rush to conclusions. Remind yourself that there's always more to the story. Choose humility over pride, understanding over assumption, and compassion over criticism. You may never know the full story behind another person's behavior, but your compassion might become the most healing part of theirs. Before judging someone, remember how it feels when people misunderstand you. That one thought alone can transform the way we respond to others. Every one of us has faced moments where our intentions were questioned, our actions were misread, and our silence was mistaken for indifference. We felt the sting of being judged without explanation, the ache of being seen only for our mistakes and not for our efforts. That pain is something universal. It connects us all. And if we can remember our own moments of being misunderstood, we will naturally become gentler with others. When you've been wrongly judged, you know how heavy it feels. You want to explain yourself, to make people understand your side of the story, but sometimes words aren't enough. Sometimes people have already made up their minds about you. That helplessness, that frustration, it teaches you what empathy really means. It teaches you that no one truly knows what's inside another person's heart. So, when we're about to judge someone else, we must pause and ask ourselves, would I want to be treated this way if the roles were reversed? Every human being has a reason behind their behavior. Maybe that colleague who always seems distant is fighting anxiety every day, but doesn't want to burden others. Maybe that friend who suddenly pulled away isn't ignoring you. They're just dealing with silent pain and don't know how to express it. Maybe that person who made a mistake is already drowning in guilt, but too ashamed to admit it. When we forget that others have inner battles, we become quick to criticize and slow to care. But if we can recall our own struggles, those times we've been judged or doubted, it brings softness to our tone, patience to our words, and kindness to our hearts. The pain of being misunderstood runs deep because it attacks our sense of worth. When someone judges you unfairly, you start questioning yourself. You wonder if you're truly seen, if you're even understood at all. But that pain can be turned into purpose. It can teach us how to see others more clearly, how to listen with empathy, and how to hold space for someone else's story without needing to label it. Every time you choose understanding over assumption, you heal not just the other person, but also the part of yourself that was once hurt by judgment. Life becomes lighter when we stop assuming and start listening. A single conversation, a moment of honest listening, can change how we see someone entirely. Sometimes all a person needs is to be heard, not judged. When we take time to hear their side, their pain, or their perspective, we realize that things are rarely as simple as they seem. What we thought was laziness could be exhaustion. What we thought was arrogance could be fear. What we thought was rejection could be protection. The moment we open our hearts to truly listen, we begin to see people for who they are, not who we assume them to be. Before you pass judgment, remember those moments when you wished someone would have just understood you instead of condemning you. That simple act of remembering connects you to compassion. It reminds you that, just like you, others crave understanding, forgiveness, and grace. And if we give them that grace, the world becomes a little softer, a little kinder, a little more human. In the end, the pain of being misunderstood can become the foundation for empathy. When we draw from our own wounds, we find the strength to treat others with care. We begin to speak with gentleness because we know how harsh words can hurt. We begin to listen with attention because we know how painful it is to go unheard. And we begin to love without judgment because we remember what it's like to be judged unfairly. That is the quiet transformation that happens when pain turns into wisdom, when instead of judging others, we choose to understand them. Choosing empathy over judgment transforms relationships in ways we often underestimate. When we make the conscious decision to understand rather than assume, to listen rather than label, we create a space where people feel safe, safe to be honest, safe to be vulnerable, and safe to grow. Empathy is not about agreeing with everyone or excusing every action. It's about choosing to see the person behind the behavior. It's about looking beyond the words and understanding the emotions that drive them. When we respond to people with empathy, something powerful happens. Walls begin to crumble. Even those who seem distant or difficult start to open up. Everyone is carrying emotional walls built out of past pain, betrayals, rejections, losses, and disappointments. But empathy is the one thing that can gently melt those walls. It doesn't demand change, it invites it. It doesn't judge, it understands. And when someone feels understood, they don't feel the need to defend themselves anymore. They feel free to be real. Think about a time when someone truly listened to you without interrupting, without trying to fix you, and without judging you. How did that feel? It's rare, isn't it? Yet that moment, that safe space, is healing. That's the power of empathy. It doesn't necessarily solve problems, but it softens hearts. It makes people feel valued and seen. Many people are not looking for advice. They're looking for understanding. They want someone to feel their emotions with them, not dismiss them. In relationships, whether between friends, family, or partners, judgment creates distance, while empathy builds bridges. When we judge, we push people away. When we empathize, we draw them closer. The person who feels heard will always feel connected. The person who feels judged will always retreat. You can't grow a healthy relationship in the soil of judgment, but you can grow deep trust in the soil of empathy. It's the difference between saying, "What's wrong with you?" and asking, "What happened to you?" That one shift in language changes everything. It turns confrontation into connection. Indi. Empathy also teaches us patience. When we understand that everyone has reasons for their behavior, we stop reacting impulsively. The angry person might just be overwhelmed. The quiet one might be processing pain. The defensive one might have been hurt too many times. When we look through the lens of empathy, we start seeing emotions instead of flaws. We begin to treat people not according to how they act, but according to what they might need in that moment. A kind word, a patient ear, or simple acceptance. Even in the workplace or community, empathy is a silent leader. It motivates without fear and influences without force. A leader who judges makes people anxious. A leader who empathizes inspires trust. The same applies in families. A parent who listens rather than criticizes builds children who are confident enough to share their hearts. Empathy doesn't weaken relationships, it deepens them. It creates loyalty, honesty, and respect that no authority or rule can ever demand. When we respond with empathy, we also heal parts of ourselves. Often, the compassion we give to others is the compassion we once needed. Every time we choose to understand, instead of condemn, we become softer, wiser, and more human. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. Life becomes peaceful when we stop demanding others to meet our expectations and start accepting them where they are. So, when you encounter someone who's hard to love or difficult to deal with, remember that empathy is not weakness. It's strength in its purest form. It's choosing love over ego, understanding over assumption, and connection over criticism. And when we make that choice consistently, we don't just change others, we change the entire atmosphere around us. People bloom where they are understood. When we choose empathy, we give others permission to grow, to trust, and to simply be themselves. Judging others creates separation, but understanding them creates connection. When we choose to judge, we build invisible walls between ourselves and others, walls made of assumptions, pride, and misunderstanding. But when we seek to understand, we build bridges of compassion, empathy, and shared humanity. The difference between a world filled with judgment and one filled with understanding is the difference between isolation and connection. Our world doesn't need more opinions, it needs more open hearts willing to listen, to see, and to care. It's natural for the mind to categorize, to label, to sort people into boxes. It's how the ego feels safe. This person is good. That person is bad. I like this one. I dislike that one. But the heart doesn't operate that way. The heart sees beyond those labels. The heart says, they're human, just like me. The moment we shift from judging to understanding, the heart awakens. And that's where true connection begins. We begin to see people not for their flaws, but for their feelings, not for their mistakes, but for their meaning. When we judge others, we close the door to connection. We assume we already know who they are, so we stop being curious. But when we understand, curiosity returns. We start asking questions like, what made them this way? Or, what are they going through? That curiosity is love in motion. It replaces criticism with compassion. Every person you meet has a reason for their behavior, and sometimes all they need is for someone to notice them without judgment. That simple act can change their day or even their life. Think of the times you felt misunderstood. Didn't it make you withdraw, protect yourself, or even stop sharing your heart? That's what judgment does. It silences people. It makes them afraid to be real. But understanding gives them permission to open up, to be authentic. When someone feels seen, truly seen, they begin to heal. They begin to trust again. The human soul blooms where it feels understood. That's why relationships rooted in empathy are so powerful. They don't demand perfection. They honor honesty. It's also important to realize that judgment doesn't only hurt the person we're judging, it also hurts us. Every time we judge, we carry an unnecessary burden. We fill our minds with negativity and comparison. But understanding frees us. When we choose to understand, we stop needing to control or criticize. We begin to see that everyone is walking their own path. And not everyone's journey will look like ours, and that's okay. Peace begins when comparison ends, and understanding is the path to that peace. Understanding is not agreement. You can understand someone's pain without justifying their mistakes. You can acknowledge their story without approving of their actions. Understanding simply means seeing the full picture before reacting. It means saying, I don't know what brought you here, but I see your humanity. That simple acknowledgement can turn conflict into connection, anger into empathy, and distance into closeness. Our world today is louder than ever. Everyone wants to be right, but few want to be kind. Judgment is loud, understanding is quiet. Judgment shouts, understanding listens. And listening is one of the greatest gifts we can offer another person. Sometimes, when someone feels unheard, they act out in frustration. But when they feel understood, they calm down, they soften, and they reconnect to their better self. That is the silent power of understanding. It doesn't force change, it invites it. So the next time you're tempted to judge someone, pause and look beyond the surface. Remember that you are only seeing one scene from their movie, one line from their book, one moment from their life. If you saw the whole story, your judgment would turn into compassion. When we understand others, love begins to flow naturally. And when love flows, connection happens effortlessly. The world doesn't need us to be judges. It needs us to be bridges, people who connect, uplift, and remind others that they are not alone. Understanding is the language of the heart, and once we learn to speak it, every soul we meet begins to feel at home.